Right. So our topic is vector algebra. So these Newtonian mechanics are majorly controlled by these vectors. Okay, so the majority of the physical quantities that we deal with in Newtonian mechanics are vectors. Okay, Nandi. So we'll see some basics of this vector algebra and how to deal with these vectors. So by the way, what is vector? Vector ante entandi? It is a physical quantity with both the magnitude and direction. So that certain magnitude undali, direction undali. So magnitude, length కావచ్చు ఏదైనా కానీ అండ్ డైరెక్షన్ ఈ రెండు ఉన్న దాన్ని వెక్టర్ అంటారు. So physical quantity with both magnitude and direction is called vector. So మనకు తెలిసిన వెక్టర్స్ ఏమన్నాయండి? Distance, displacement, speed, velocity. One is scalar, another is a vector. Right? These are scalars and these are vectors. So now ఒకసారి try to get the difference between these two. Distance కి displacement కి తేడా ఏంటండి? So you are attaching information about the direction also. Suppose what is that? So where is main gate? దానికి ఏం చెప్పాలి? What is the answer? It is some 200 meters away. 200 meters away from here అనేది ఒక ఆన్సర్ అవుతుంది. So is it a complete information? So 200 meters away towards south. So when you attach direction information also, certain physical quantities description will become complete. Right? So అలాంటి వాటిని వెక్టర్స్ అన్నారు. Like your energy is a scalar, pressure is a scalar, and here power is also scalar. Force, potential, force is a vector. Area is a vector. Okay, so you have to confirm these things. Let's say pressure equation and what is pressure? Force per unit area, right? Here force is a vector and you are developing a scalar out of it. అంటే ఒక పక్కేమో వెక్టర్ ఉంది, ఇటు పక్కేమో స్కేలర్ ఉంది. సో somehow you have to convert this vector also into a scalar. అప్పుడు మాత్రమే ఆ సైడ్ left hand side you have a scalar. Right? So here area is also a vector. ఏరియా అనేది కూడా ఒక వెక్టర్ గానే బిహేవ్ చేస్తుంది. సో దాని డైరెక్షన్ ఏంటి అనేది తెలుసుకోవాలి. ఓకేనండి? సో దట్ ఈస్ వన్ ఆస్పెక్ట్. సో నౌ the basic rules of this vector algebra. Algebra అంటే ఏంటి? How to deal with them mathematically అనేది చూస్తాం. Right? So the first thing is as long as you keep the magnitude and direction of a vector, as long as you keep the magnitude and direction of a vector remains as it is. Vector properties will not change. I mean that rule we will be using in triangle rule, triangle law and parallelogram law. Let's say when you are adding two vectors, what do? You connect them head to tail. You shift this vector and connect the vectors head to tail, and if you join the first tail and last head, that is the result of sum of two vectors. So all these are possible only when you obey that rule. So as long as magnitude and direction remains constant, vector properties will not change. Okay. What is the rule? As long as magnitude and direction does not change, vector properties remain same. Even if you shift. So even if you shift, the vector properties does not change. So now comes the question, how to define magnitude and direction. So if a vector ki direction atla decide cheyali. We have a single vector. I mean, when you have two vectors, you can define angle between them. But you are given only one vector. So how to define angle for a single vector? Single vector ki direction or angle atla cheppalante ఒకటే ఉంది vector. అంతే. First aim is to fix the direction and magnitude. Now comes the first question, how to fix the direction. ఇది ఏ డైరెక్షన్ ఉందనేది ఎట్లా చెప్పాలి? So you have to take a reference direction. ఒక reference direction మనమే fix అవ్వాలి. So when you consider a surface, there are two possibilities. Either you draw a tangent to the surface. Let's say your surface is like this. Then you draw a tangent to the surface. Otherwise, you can draw a normal to the surface. And let's say this is your vector. So whenever you have a single vector and you are asked to fix the direction, what you have to do? Either you have to draw a tangent or a normal. Then with respect to the tangent or with respect to the normal, you can define the direction. So with respect to tangent, that angle is called latitude angle. The angle is called latitude angle, and with respect to normal, this angle is called co-latitude. The angle measured with respect to normal is called co-latitude. The angle measured with respect to tangent is called latitude. Okay, ekkada vaadtam? Where do we come across this? We'll be using that most often. Let's say optics. You have a light ray, incident ray, reflected ray, refracted ray. So here the angles you are measuring are with respect to normal to the surface. So ఇక్కడ మీరు మెజర్ చేసిన యాంగిల్ ఏంటంటే ఆ సర్ఫేస్ కి ఒక పర్పెండిక్యులర్ లైన్ గీశారు. With respect to the normal, you are measuring the angle. So these angles are called co-latitude angles. So the angles are measured with respect to normal, co-latitude అంటారు. అదే మీరు బ్రాగ్స్ లా తీసుకోండి. బ్రాగ్స్ లా ఏం చెప్తుంది? L lambda is 2d sin theta అంటారు. Where d is the separation between two layers in a crystal. Right? So where do you measure angle here? ఈ స్టోరీలో యాంగిల్ ఎక్కడ మెజర్ చేస్తున్నారండి? ఈ థీటా ఎక్కడిది? that theta is measured with respect to tangent to the surface. మీరు ఏదైతే సర్ఫేస్ తీసుకున్నారో దానికి ఒక tangent లైన్ గీయాలి. అక్కడ మెజర్ చేసేటువంటి యాంగిల్ ని ఇట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ లాటిట్యూడ్ యాంగిల్. సో బ్రాగ్స్ లాలో యూజ్ చేస్తున్నటువంటి యాంగిల్, ద యాంగిల్ ఇస్ మెజర్డ్ విత్ రెస్పెక్ట్ టు tangent to the surface. That's called latitude. Whereas in optics you will be using colatitude angle. So what is the maximum value for this? So here theta varies from 0 degrees to 90. So if that number crosses 90, you have to measure the angle from other direction. So here for the refracted ray, the theta is increased from 0 degrees to 90 degrees and it is traveling beyond 90 degrees. Then you have to measure the angle from other direction. So this angle should be between 0 to 90 degrees when you are describing angle made by a single vector. ఒక వెక్టర్ గురించి మాట్లాడేటప్పుడు ఎలా ఉండాలి? యాంగిల్ వాల్యూ between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. What about the other case? When you have two vectors. So when you have two vectors, you have to develop a converging pair or a diverging pair and measure the least possible angle. So రెండు వెక్టర్స్ ఇచ్చినప్పుడు వాటి మధ్య యాంగిల్ చెప్పాలన్నప్పుడు both vectors must be either a diverging pair or a converging pair. రెండు కూడా ఒక పాయింట్ నుంచి స్టార్ట్ అయ్యి బయటకు వెళ్ళాలి లేదా ఒక పాయింట్కి వచ్చి కన్వర్జ్ అవ్వాలి. Then only you can define angle and that should be the least number. So this value varies from 0 degrees to 180 degrees. So if the line crosses beyond 180, you have to measure the angle on the other direction. You have to consider the lowest value between 0 to 180. Okay. So what if we have a pair of vectors like this? ఇలాంటి ఒక పేరు. One is converging vector, another is diverging vector. One is converging vector, another is diverging vector. What is the angle between them? అప్పుడు యాంగిల్ ఎక్కడ మెజర్ చేయాలి? ఏం చేయాలంటే you have to use this rule. As long as you keep the magnitude and direction constant, you can shift the vector to anywhere. So ఇప్పుడు దీన్ని షిఫ్ట్ చేసి ఒక కన్వర్జింగ్ పేర్ తయారు చేయండి. కన్వర్జింగ్ పేర్ ఆర్ డైవర్జింగ్ పేర్. లెట్స్ సే ఐ షిఫ్ట్ దిస్. ఎటు షిఫ్ట్ చేయాలి? ఎదర్ అప్ ఆర్ డౌన్ ఆర్ లెఫ్ట్ ఆర్ రైట్. అప్ డౌన్ కానీ లెఫ్ట్ రైట్ కానీ మూవ్ చేసి నాకు ఒక కన్వర్జింగ్ పేర్ రావాలి. ఎట్లా చేస్తాను? ఐ షిఫ్ట్ లెఫ్ట్. Shifting it in this direction. So this is the angle between these two. This is not the angle. This is also okay, but this is not the angle. Here this is not the angle. You have to shift them and generate a. So here I am generating a converging pair. So at this point both vectors are converging. Other diverging pair కావాలంటే ఏం చేయాలి? I can shift it downwards. నేను కిందకి షిఫ్ట్ చేస్తే ఏమొస్తుంది? దెన్ ఆర్ దీస్ టు సేమ్? రెండు సేమా కాదని ఎక్కడ తెలుస్తుంది? సో యూ కెన్ చెక్ దట్. Two lines or two chords cross, angle on the other side will be same. This angle is same as this. Right? So when you have two vectors, you have to shift the vectors so that you get a converging pair or a diverging pair. Then only you can measure the angle, and the angle value is between 0 degrees and 180 degrees. If it is beyond 180 degrees, you have to measure the angle from the other direction. So when they are opposite each other, the angle is 180 degrees. If it is above 180 degrees, you have to measure it from other direction. Okay. So we have fixed the direction of a vector. How to specify the direction? And there comes some special cases where direction information cannot be fixed. Let's say circular motion. Circular motion ఎలా ఉంటుందంటే, how to bring an object into circular motion? ఒక ఆబ్జెక్ట్ ని సర్క్యులర్ మోషన్ లో తేవాలంటే ఏం చేయాలి? You have to apply a perpendicular force always. Let's say the object is moving in this direction. ఇట్లా మూవ్ అవుతుంది. ఏం చేయాలి? You have to apply a force perpendicular to direction of motion. ఇట్లా ఒక ఫోర్స్ అప్లై చేయాలి. ఏమవుతుంది? ఇలా వెళ్తుందని మీరు ఇటు పుల్ చేశారు. It takes a turn. Again you have to apply a perpendicular force. ఏమవుతుంది? Takes a turn again. Again apply perpendicular force. So when there is a force acting perpendicular to direction of motion always, the object undergoes circular motion. So direction of motion ఒకవైపు ఉంది, దానికి perpendicular, always perpendicular to direction of motion. If some force acts, the object comes into circular motion. Okay. So now, what is the direction of the vector for this motion? Now I am trying to describe the angular speed or angular velocity or angular momentum. How to assign a direction to this? So the object is moving in a circular motion. There is a perpendicular force always acting on the object. So let's say the object is rotating, taking 10 rotations per second. I consider 10 units of length of vector. And if it changes to 20 rotations per second, I make it 20 centimeters. Magnitude is okay. How to fix the direction? Let's say the object is rotating in anti-clockwise direction. ఇట్లా తిరుగుతుంది. దాని వెక్టర్ ఏ డైరెక్షన్ లో చూపించాలండి for that motion. Let's say object is moving in a straight line. I can show it is moving towards east or towards west or north, south, ఏదో ఒక డైరెక్షన్ చెప్పొచ్చు. The direction is changing continuously. At every point direction is changing. ఏం చేయాలి? Which direction should we fix? ఏ డైరెక్షన్ ఫిక్స్ అవ్వాలి? So here you have to take the cross product. So the angular momentum is given by R cross P. What is R? It is the radial vector connecting center of the circle to the object. Radial vector, and what is momentum? So this is the momentum vector. So R is the radial vector and P is the momentum vector, and L is given by R cross P. Now I have to give the direction to L. Etla istanu? I can use either right hand thumb rule or left hand thumb rule. Etlaga? You have to travel. If your curl of fingers represents the direction of vector to second vector. You are calculating r cross p. You have to start from first vector r and move up to p. If your curl of fingers represents the direction of movement from r to p, you have to consider the lowest angle. Then your thumb represents the direction of result. ఎట్లా చెప్పాలి అప్పుడు? సో r కి p కి మధ్య లోయెస్ట్ యాంగిల్ ఏ డైరెక్షన్ ఉందంటే is this the one? అదే అవుతుందా? You have to identify the lowest angle direction from r to p. You have to identify the lowest angle and identify the direction. ఎట్లా చూడాలంటే r నుంచి p కి. So when you are measuring angle, you have to keep the first rule. ఏంటది? Either you should have a converging pair or a diverging pair. ఇక్కడ ఏం జరుగుతుంది? One is a converging vector, another is a diverging vector. ఏం చేయాలంటే either you have to shift r or shift p so that you will get a converging pair or a diverging pair. So I am shifting r so that I get a diverging pair. Option B and A. I can shift P downwards so that I get a converging pair. ఇప్పుడు డైరెక్షన్ చెప్పండి ఫ్రమ్ R to P. ఎట్లా చెప్పాలి? So if your curl of fingers represent the direction of rotation from R to P. ఓకేనా? కన్వర్జింగ్ పేర్ ఆఫ్ ఏంటంటే R to P, P ఇక్కడ ఉంది. This is the direction from R to P. ఇక్కడైతే డైవర్జింగ్ పేర్ తీసుకున్నాను. So your direction must be perpendicular. So when the object is rotating in a anti-clockwise direction, the angular momentum vector will be perpendicular to the plane and upwards. అదే మనము లెఫ్ట్ హ్యాండ్ థంబ్ రూల్ వాడాము. సేమ్ రూల్ అది. ఇఫ్ యువర్ కర్ల్ ఆఫ్ ఫింగర్స్ రిప్రజెంట్స్ ద డైరెక్షన్ ఆఫ్ మోషన్, థంబ్ రిప్రజెంట్స్ ద రిజల్టెంట్. ఇప్పుడు ఏమవుతుందంటే ఇట్ విల్ బి డౌన్వర్డ్స్. కర్ల్ ఆఫ్ ఫింగర్స్ యాంటీ క్లాక్ వైజ్, రిజల్టెంట్ వెక్టర్ ఇస్ డౌన్వర్డ్స్. సో అంటే ఏంటి? యూ హ్యావ్ టూ పాసిబిలిటీస్ for the direction of the vector. So that is why these kind of vectors are called pseudo vectors. So the vectors which are resultant of a cross product are called pseudo vectors. They are not real vectors and they do not possess any activity in the direction of the vector. A vector ఉన్న direction లోకి ఎటువంటి activity ఉండదు. Entire activity is in the plane perpendicular to the vector. And the direction is not fixed. If you consider right hand thumb rule, you will get one direction. If you consider left hand thumb rule, you will get another direction. So once you start with the right hand thumb rule, you have to continue it till the end of the story. So most often we consider right hand thumb rule. So when the object is revolving in anti-clockwise direction, angular momentum is upwards. Okay, so they are called pseudo vectors, and all the other vectors like force, displacement, velocity, they are called polar vectors because the direction of vector represents the direction of the activity. So it is pointing towards a pole, it is representing a direction. So that's why they are called polar vectors, where the direction of vector represents the direction of the activity. Pseudo vectors, the direction of activity is perpendicular to the plane containing the vector. Okay, so ఇలాంటి వాటిని ఏమన్నారు? Pseudo vectors అన్నారు. Okay. Okay, so the next topic is addition of vectors. We have two laws. One is triangle law, another is parallelogram law for vector addition. Right? So when you try to add two vectors, what you have to do? You have to shift the vectors and join vectors head to tail. Rule number one is shift the vectors. Join head to tail. Head to tail join cheyali. Then sum is what? Obtained by joining first tail to last head. So when you have group of vectors, let's say you want to add 2, 3 vectors, what you have to do? You have to join them head to tail and join the first vector tail to the last vector head. So that is the result of addition of all the 3 vectors. Okay. Same if you want to subtract the vectors. Subtract challenge em cheyalante. Let's say you want a minus b. You have to flip the second vector. B ki negative sign kavali naku. Em cheyali? You have to flip the vector second vector b. So this is minus b. Then you add. So a minus b etla rastunaru? A minus b can be written as a plus of minus b. So I am generating minus b by flipping the vector b and then I have to add these two. So this is a plus minus b. Right? This is a minus b. So the same thing you can calculate from parallelogram law. Parallelogram law em cheptundi? When you have 2 vectors, construct a parallelogram by drawing parallel lines to both a and b. Then one diagonal will give you a plus b, another diagonal will give you a minus b. So both are same, entire activity is also same, but in parallelogram law you are calculating both a plus b and a minus b at a time. Right? So one way you are constructing a triangle just like what you are doing here. You are shifting the vectors and constructing a triangle. Rule is same. But only advantage with parallelogram law or additional information that you can get from parallelogram law is you can calculate the dot product directly from parallelogram law. Etlagandi? So if I take a plus b whole square minus a minus b whole square, what do I get? A square plus b square plus 2ab minus a square plus b square minus 2ab. We get 4 times ab. So if you divide this with 1 by 4, we get a dot b. Dot product of 2 vectors can be calculated from parallelogram law. So the next things we will see in the next session, and here comes a doubt. What is that? A dot b is a scalar. I mean that we will see, but the basic information a dot b is a scalar. On the other hand you have vectors. A plus b is a vector, a minus b is also a vector. మరి ఆ కన్వర్షన్ ఎక్కడ జరిగిపోతుందండి? ఇక్కడ ఏదో అనుకున్నాం కదా, ప్రెషర్ ఇస్ ఫోర్స్ బై ఏరియా అన్నప్పుడు ఒకటి వెక్టర్ అయితే రెండోది కూడా వెక్టర్ అయితే తీరాలి, లేకపోతే ఇతర స్కేలార్ రాదు. ఇక్కడ ఏం జరుగుతుంది? a plus b is a vector, a minus b is also a vector. Result a dot b is scalar. So actually there is a dot product. The squaring operation itself is a dot product. A plus b whole square is what? A plus b dot a plus b. So here you have a dot product which is not visible directly. A minus b whole square is a dot product. A minus b dot a minus b. And mathematically it is equal to a dot b. That is secondary. But you are going for a dot product which gives you a scalar. Okay. So you have to verify all these things whenever you come across any physical quantity in your textbook, any equation in your textbook, or whenever you study physics. Whether the vectors are same remaining vectors or not, whether this pseudo vectors or how do they interact with polar vectors, can we add a pseudo vector to polar vector, what happens if I cross product a pseudo vector with a polar vector. So we'll see in the next session. But if you understand these activities, I mean vector algebra, how to deal with vectors, you'll understand majority of the concepts clearly. Okay, so that is why it became our first chapter. Okay, so rest of the things we'll see in the next session.